In July 1944, representatives from 44 nations gathered at a hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. World War II was still raging, but the Allied powers already knew they were going to win, and they were meeting to decide something more important than the war itself. They were deciding who would control the global financial system afterward, who would set the rules, who would issue the currency that everyone else would use, who would be effectively the financial ruler of the world. America won that meeting before it started because America had something nobody else had. It had 70% of the world's gold reserves. It had the largest manufacturing base in human history. It was the world's largest creditor. It had emerged from the war stronger than when it entered. Every other major economy was devastated. Britain was bankrupt. France was rebuilding. Germany and Japan were destroyed. The Soviet Union had lost 27 million people. America didn't need to fight for financial dominance at Bretton Woods. It simply showed up, and the math was undeniable. The dollar became the global reserve currency. Every other currency was pegged to the dollar. The dollar was backed by gold, and the entire global financial system was built around American power. That was 80 years ago. And right now, China is executing a strategy to do to America exactly what America did to Britain in 1944. Step by step, systematically, quietly, and almost nobody in the Western press is explaining how deliberate and how advanced this strategy actually is. By the end of this video, you're going to understand what China is building, how far along they are, and what it means for every dollar you own. Stay with me. But to understand what China is doing, you first need to understand exactly how America took financial dominance from Britain, because the playbook is identical. In 1900, Britain was the financial center of the world. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. London was where international trade was financed. British banks handled the majority of global commerce. If you were a merchant in India trading with a merchant in Brazil, you probably settled the transaction in pound sterling through a London bank. Britain's financial dominance was so complete that even transactions that had nothing to do with Britain went through British institutions. This gave Britain what economists call seigniorage privilege, the ability to print currency that the whole world needs, which means you can effectively tax global trade simply by issuing the currency everyone uses. And it gave Britain enormous geopolitical leverage. Countries that depended on pound sterling for trade couldn't easily oppose British foreign policy without risking their access to the global financial system. America understood this mechanism precisely, and from the 1920s onward, American policymakers deliberately worked to displace the pound with the dollar, not through military conquest, through financial strategy. Step 1. Become the world's largest creditor. America lent to Britain and France during World War I. After the war, those countries owed America. Creditors have leverage over debtors. America used that leverage. Step 2. Build gold reserves. America accumulated gold aggressively through the 1920s and 1930s. By 1944, America held 70% of global gold reserves. Gold was the foundation of monetary credibility. Whoever had the gold set the rules. Step 3. Create alternative financial infrastructure. American banks expanded internationally. Wall Street developed as a rival to London for international finance. American institutions slowly gave global traders an alternative to British financial systems. Step 4. Wait for Britain to exhaust itself. World War II did what World War I started. Britain spent everything to survive. By 1944, Britain was financially dependent on American support. The leverage had completely reversed. Step 5. Bretton Woods. With Britain dependent and weakened, America proposed a new global financial architecture with the dollar at the center. Britain's chief negotiator, John Maynard Keynes, arguably the greatest economist of the 20th century, argued for a neutral global reserve currency called the Bancor, not controlled by any single nation. He lost. America's proposal won. The dollar became the world's reserve currency, and the American century began. That is the 5-step playbook, and China is running every single step of it right now. Step 1. Become a major creditor. China has spent 25 years lending to developing countries through its Belt and Road Initiative. Over $1 trillion in infrastructure loans to countries across Asia, Africa, Latin America, and Eastern Europe. Roads, railways, ports, power plants. China financed them all. And just like America's World War I loans to Britain, these loans create dependency. Countries that owe China money cannot easily oppose Chinese foreign policy. The leverage flows toward Beijing. China also holds approximately $765 billion in U.S. Treasury bonds. This is often discussed as a vulnerability. What if China dumps its treasury holdings? But that's the wrong way to look at it. China holding American debt gives China creditor status over America itself. The relationship between America and China is partly the relationship between a creditor and a debtor. And we already know what that means for who sets the terms. Step 2. Accumulate gold. Since 2009, China has been buying gold at an accelerating pace. The People's Bank of China has added hundreds of tons of gold to its reserves every year. Official figures put China's gold reserves at over 2,260 tons as of 2024, making it the sixth largest holder globally. But many analysts believe the actual figure is dramatically higher, since China accumulates gold through state entities that don't appear in official reserve statistics. Some credible estimates put China's real holdings at 5,000 to 10,000 tons. If accurate, China is positioning itself exactly as America positioned itself before Bretton Woods, building the gold reserves that create monetary credibility. Why does gold matter in a world of digital currency and floating exchange rates? Because gold is the asset that exists outside any nation's financial system. It can't be sanctioned. It can't be frozen. It can't be devalued by another country's printing press. When Russia was sanctioned in 2022 and $300 billion of its dollar reserves were frozen overnight, every country watching, especially China, received a clear message. Dollar reserves can be weaponized. Gold cannot. Central bank gold buying hit a 55-year record high in 2022 and has remained elevated ever since. China leads that rush. Step 3. Build alternative financial infrastructure. This is where China's strategy becomes most visible and most underestimated in Western analysis. China has been systematically building every component of an alternative global financial system. CIPS, the cross-border interbank payment system, is China's alternative to SWIFT, the Western-controlled messaging network that coordinates international bank transfers. When America sanctioned Russia and cut it off from SWIFT, it demonstrated that controlling financial infrastructure is equivalent to controlling trade. China has been building CIPS since 2015. Today, over 1,400 financial institutions across more than 100 countries are connected to CIPS. It's not yet a full replacement for SWIFT, but it is a functioning parallel system that grows every year. China has also been aggressively pushing Yuan-denominated trade agreements with major partners. Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil exporter, began accepting yuan for oil sales to China in 2023. This is geopolitically enormous. Oil priced in dollars is the foundation of dollar dominance. The petrodollar system has been the backbone of dollar reserve currency status since the 1970s. Every crack in the petrodollar system is a crack in the foundation of American financial power. Saudi Arabia accepting yuan is not a small crack. Russia now settles the majority of its trade with China in yuan and rubles rather than dollars. India has been exploring rupee-based trade with multiple partners. In 2023, Brazil and China agreed to settle bilateral trade in yuan and reais, completely bypassing the dollar. The BRICS bloc, which now includes Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iran, Egypt, and Ethiopia alongside the founding members, represents over 35% of global GDP and is actively building alternative payment rails. These aren't random developments. They are part of a coherent, accelerating shift away from dollar dependency, actively encouraged by China. Step 4. Wait for America to exhaust itself. China doesn't need to defeat America militarily. It doesn't need to outcompete America in every industry simultaneously. It just needs to wait. America's national debt has crossed $36 trillion and is growing at roughly 8% annually. Interest payments alone have exceeded $1 trillion per year, more than the entire U.S. defense budget. The Congressional Budget Office projects that debt to GDP will reach 166% by 2054 if current trajectories hold. The political system cannot make the hard choices to reverse this. America is doing to itself what World War II did to Britain, exhausting its financial strength through commitments it can no longer sustain. China is patient. They're playing a decades-long game while American political cycles think in 4-year increments. Now, here's the critical question. Is China actually close to displacing the dollar? The honest answer is, not yet. But closer than most people think, moving faster than the trajectory suggests. The dollar currently represents about 58% of global foreign exchange reserves, down from 71% in 2001. That's a 13 percentage point decline in just over 20 years. The yuan represents roughly 2.3%, still small, but the trend line matters more than the current number. The dollar lost 13 points in 20 years. At that rate, in another 2 decades, it represents less than 45% of reserves, still significant, but no longer unambiguously dominant. More importantly, the marginal direction of change matters. New trade agreements are increasingly settled in non-dollar currencies. New bilateral relationships, especially across the global south, are being structured to reduce dollar dependency. The infrastructure for alternatives exists and is growing. None of this displaces the dollar overnight, but it erodes the foundation gradually, which is exactly how Britain lost reserve currency status. Not suddenly, but through 30 years of incremental erosion that seemed manageable until it wasn't.